Meet the Candidate Series. The ARC of Pennsylvania hosts an interview of Tarah Probst, candidate from Monroe and Pike County's 189th House District, by Sarah Tagline, self-advocate. The Meet the Candidate Series is an opportunity for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to hear from candidates on disability issues. Candidates from all parties have been invited to participate. The ARC of Pennsylvania is a non-partisan organization and does not endorse political candidates.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Meet the Candidate series that the ARC of Pennsylvania has been hosting. We're talking to candidates who are running in open seats for the PA House or Senate. And an open seat is where an incumbent, someone who has held the seat before, is not running. With us today is Tarah Probst. She's the Democrat candidate running for the Pennsylvania House 189th District of Monroe and Pike Counties. She is running to replace retiring Representative Rosemary Brown. As the first female mayor of Stroudsburg, Tarah has worked to ensure that her local community continues to support each of the residents that call it home. Some of her key issues are property tax relief, infrastructure, business investment, expanding access to affordable health care, education, and workers' rights. And also joining us today is Sarah Tagline. Sarah Tagline is a self-advocate who works for the ARC of Pennsylvania. She is a graduate of Millersville University and the Penn State Harrisburg's Career Studies program. In her free time, Sarah enjoys reading, hanging out with her friends, and going to see plays. So welcome, Tarah, and welcome, Sarah. And with us, we have Mary Claire, who is the CEO of the ARC of NEPA. And Tarah, in case you don't realize that the ARC of Pennsylvania is the leading statewide advocacy organization for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Mm-hmm. We have been doing this for 73 years, I believe, coming up here in October. And really what makes us strong is the fact that we have 30 chapters across the Commonwealth. And of course, the ARC of NEPA has a big chunk of that Commonwealth. And we are very glad to have Mary Claire and her group at the ARC of NEPA with us today. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Claire for her to just say a few brief words, and then we're going to turn it over to Sarah.
Okay.
Good morning, Tarah. Thank you so much for your time this morning. As Sherry mentioned, the ARC of Northeastern Pennsylvania serves Lackawanna, Luzerne, Carbon, Monroe, and Pike counties. And in Pike and Monroe counties, we do advocacy. We have a individual on staff who just supports individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, children and adults, and their families. And what I'd like to do today is to emphasize for you what the nature of the advocacy calls that we've been receiving of late. Parents will call us and tell us that they are concerned because they're individual who may require intense level supports. Their adult child with developmental disabilities may require intense supports. They have been seeking a provider of those supports and have been unable to obtain services. Why? Because of the staffing crisis. Providers like the ARC of NEPA are challenged at this point in time to accept referrals who need intense support simply because we don't have the staff necessary to guarantee their safety. And that's critical to who we are. So what's happening, Tarah, is that waiting lists are growing. Families are desperately in need of services because we don't have the staff that we need to support their family members. So we'd like your support going forward to help us to help and their families.
Yes, I just want to say that I'm going to date myself here. My first job out of college was with the Bell Atlantic Yellow Pages. And I remember going to the Wilkes-Barre chapter doing Yellow Page ads for ARC. And so we're going over 20 years ago. I mean, from 1992, 30 years ago, really. And I can just say that I know the wonderful things that you do. My father-in-law, who passed away back in 2003, he actually was a board member on the Burnley Workshop, William Johnson. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all your time and dedication, because it is something that I'm definitely an advocate for, not only for the services, but for pay increases for people working in this field, like any social worker, or it's underpaid, you're understaffed, the paperwork is more than it ever was before, the requirements are off the charts, and people are leaving the field. And what can I do in Harrisburg to get better wages, more support, and to really, help with this community? They can thrive, they can work, they can live independently. And that's a goal. I mean, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here. You've got an advocate in me no matter what, and you always have. So that's something I've always felt. And this passion will definitely, go with me to Harrisburg. I work in a drug and alcohol rehab facility part-time. And, even when you look at caseworkers there, I mean, it's just, we just need to pay better wages. We need more people to be, smart people who we have to help within this field. And they're just not taking these jobs because they can't afford to pay their family in these jobs. And you do it out of the goodness of your heart. And with inflation, with everything else that's going on in the world today, we can't have you leaving. And we need more of you. And we need more support, for these families. So 100%, no matter what, you will always have my support. And I will always be an advocate for that.
Thank you, Tara.
You're welcome.
It's important for all of the providers across the Commonwealth.
Yes. Yes. So.
Tara, how would you advocate for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families who are on the waiting list for community services?
Sure. Well, it's more than just one level of this. The way I would advocate is to get the pay up for, the people to get jobs and work in this field and help the families. We need more, people doing the jobs so that we can get these families the help they need. So it's advocate for that. I would totally be an advocate for on-the-job training, things like that for these families. So, for example, right now there's a work shortage. I mean, people are hiring everywhere. And I would want there to be, training for certain positions. So for example, if one of the families, has a member in their family that really wants to be in hospitality, well, we know that there's jobs everywhere for that. And we should be able to go ahead, take this individual and say, look, you want to be in the service industry. What would you like to do? Would you like to be a server? Would you like to work in a kitchen? Try to figure out what is needed and wanted and train properly, and be able to have these individuals earn a living, have dignity for their job, get paid, have insurance, and have all the wonderful benefits that anybody else would have. And, valuable to have dignity for your job and be a valuable asset to the work economy, I think is so good for a psyche. It's good for your, for your family members. And it's a good routine. So I would advocate for training for the jobs. I would advocate for higher pay for the people providing these services. And I think, numbers would come in with more people would, be interested in getting back into this field, the field they had to leave because they can't afford to feed their families on the salaries they were making. So I think it's like a two-prong. I think it's training development. And then I think it's higher wages for the people, to come in and help with advocacy themselves.
What investment to expand long-term services and support in the communities for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities will you advocate for?
Sure. So, well, the investments, the investments itself is to, obviously there's money in budgets, right? We know this. We know that Pennsylvania had over $1 billion of money that they could have spent anywhere. It came down from the federal government, right? And that's not touching their fund balance or anything else. I mean, think about what over $1 billion could do, right? Right there alone, we should have, expos to hire people for these positions and maybe sign-on bonuses, and just look at the long-term effect of our economy, because there are workers out there in your community that would do a fabulous job for any employer. So the investments would be to invest in the workers, to be able to have workers in numbers so that their services can expand out to the families, would be number one. And then obviously for the community, it's education. We need to get the word out there that these, that this exists, what we can do, how we can help. So it's never a one prong, it's always multiple levels, because we're trying to get workers in the field, but then these workers are out there trying to help families and train potential future workers of our community. And it's secular. So it's also a domino effect, right? You can't do one without the other. So my investments would be, Pennsylvania has a budget, the money shifts year after year, and sometimes it doesn't shift in the favor of these types of programs. As a matter of fact, they've been cut and cut and cut and cut again. So my job would be to bring the money back to, our local 189th district to provide money for more services. And that's what I would definitely work towards.
Tara, would you also support the closure of Pennsylvania 4 remaining state centers?
No, I'd open more. I would absolutely not. And it's infuriating when they want to cut. They always cut from the people that need it the most. And, if we would invest in people that need it the most, and I'm talking from public education all the way up to the ARC. If you invest in our future of the people that need it the most, your economy, your life, your community is going to be a better place. And when I hear about all the cuts for services like this, among other things, from, like I said, from public education cuts to, I can't even think about if they cut this program for ARC. I don't even want to think about it. They would leave so many families behind. And I would advocate for not closing anything, but adding additional services.
Tara, would you support, how will you work to address the shortage of direct support professionals?
Well, this is what it is. They're not paid enough. I mean, it's absolutely the case. We live in Monroe County, and how I had talked about a domino effect before. We don't fairly fund our schools from the state. I mean, our local school districts in Monroe County are funded, some of them under 30%, when the Constitution says that they have to be funded by 50%, right? So districts outside of Monroe County are getting funded by the state, and therefore the school taxes and property taxes are much lower than they are in Monroe County. It is expensive to live here. We are dead last in school funding in the state out of 501 school districts. Think about it, 497 districts are doing better than us. Our property taxes are the highest in the state, and that's because of our school taxes. But we support public education. So if we can get the fair funding fixed, bring the cost down for families, which would also bring rents down, because landlords have to charge high rents because their taxes are high. We would be able to have people be able to live better in the community they love and have the roots in. Nobody wants to move. They want to stay here and they want to thrive here. So, I guess the question is, for the staffing shortages is because they can't afford to be in this field to, help the families that need it the most, because they have to live. And so if we can, get our fair funding in schools, if we could direct more monies towards the caregivers and, you know, the people that have an expertise in how to help these communities thrive, everything is going to get better for everybody. And from the top down, everyone's going to be living better. So the only thing that I could say is, for the shortage, we need to pay better, and we need to bring our cost of living down in Monroe County, and we need to put more quality into education. And this isn't just public education, this is education to get what the ARC actually does for our community. Education is key. I can't come into this position thinking that I know everything about every agency, what they do all the time, but I am familiar with ARC and I am familiar with what you do. And to think that you're having staffing shortages, it's only hurting the families that need it the most. So we need to make sure that we recruit and bring people in to be able to step into these positions, feel good about their job, and have dignity for their job, and, you know, get the community working as a whole again. And I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Tara, what action will you take to assist in reducing the risk of crime committed against people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Oh, geez. I mean, it's right now. Okay, so I'm on the Stroud Area Regional Police Commission I'm going on my 7th year. I work, like I said, part-time in a drug and alcohol rehab. And I know that a lot of the crimes that are committed are substance abuse, or, excuse me, some, you know, a lot of the mental issues that are going on in today's, that they're not properly taken care of. And, you know, a lot of times we hear the police, well, you know, there's nothing we can do, you know, there's nothing we can do about it. Our jails are overrun. They don't want to, you know, put people in jail that, you know, have disabilities. But what about you're asking about the people that are causing crimes against people with disabilities, right? It's unbelievable. There's no answer. We advocate for it. I mean, at our SARP commission the other night, I said, I don't care what they're saying or what they're doing. You need to do it. And if it's walking the streets on the beat on Main Street to make sure that your town is safer, get out of your car. And I love our police force, don't get me wrong. But if you can drive up and down Main Street, you can walk up and down Main Street, and you could make sure that people know your presence is there to help keep a town safe. I mean, that's just one aspect of it. Reporting how many people with intellectual disabilities, those crimes aren't even being reported, the abuse against them, because they don't know. And they maybe think people that are supposed to be taking care of them, they think it's normal maybe if they're being abused. And, you know, education, if you went right now to Monroe County and said, there's X amount of number of crimes that are happening against people with intellectual disabilities in our county, I think people would say, really? I didn't know that. And we have to let people know what's going on. You need to educate people. So I'm one for, I mean, I'm an advocate, you know, and I'm an advocate to just have safer streets, safer lives. And again, it's education, and we need to have the workers out there to be assisting these families, to letting them know, look, if this is happening to you, this shouldn't be, this is a crime. They're taking advantage of you. You need to call somebody. I mean, just even the person out there who's helping the families, like, do you know what I'm trying to say? I know I feel like I'm all over the place, but it's such a loaded question, because again, it's all different levels that we could be helping here. And we need funding, we need education, and we need the staff to make sure that they're there to be the advocate for these families that this abuse is happening to. And if there's a shortage, there's no advocate. So it's every question could really come back to the same thing. It's funds, education, and staff shortages, and these problems can be solved.
How will you work to ensure the education system in Pennsylvania meets the needs of all children, especially those with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
So I just have to tell you from a personal story. My son is severely ADHD. Now, through the years, he has learned, they've been great in the Stroudsburg Area School District and, through counseling and everything. He's a thriving student. I mean, he's going into 10th grade. You can't even compare his behavior in kindergarten or first grade versus 10th grade. His IEP and his teachers, and they just changed his life, and they changed it for the better. And we have a strong education system in Pennsylvania. I think we're in the top 10% in the country for education. But teachers are leaving too. And they're leaving for other reasons, right? It's like, they want to go in the classroom and they want to be able to teach. And they've got a lot of people that just aren't supporting public schools. So again, public schools is top of my list to fund, to make sure we retain teachers, to make sure there's more teachers in the pipeline because they're leaving as well. That's a respected position. They teach our children, which is our future. So if we can get the funds back in the schools, of course, we'd want more services, for intellectual and developmental, disabilities. And like I said, my child was on an IEP, was on it from first grade all the way up through 9th grade. And he's now off of it. And they just did wonders with my kid. And there are some school districts out there that don't have the luxury of maybe what I experienced in the Stroudsburg Area School District. And we just need more educators and we need more resources in the public schools. And one other side note I want to let you know, after 2018, when I ran for Senate, I substitute taught for 6 months from January to June. And I was in the resource center at the North Warren School District. And it changed my life to see how these teachers would work with these students, and they would find a niche, whether it be through art or music, and just simply learning colors and coloring. And there was some severe cases in this resource room. And these kids looked forward to getting to school more than anything else. I was sad to think what they were going to do in the summertime because they loved it so much, and they were loved, cared for, they were learning. And it was a real humbling experience to be in that classroom for the 6 months. And just the teachers and their support staff, they truly love what they do. And it was really, I'd come home and tell my husband, I was like, these ladies, and there was one gentleman in there, but I always primarily worked with the ladies. I'm like, these ladies they just warm my heart. These kids warm my heart. And it was a really special moment to be there for 6 months.
What ways would you promote meaningful employment opportunities in your district for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Well, that goes back to the training, and it goes back to the resources. So if we have the staff that can get with the families, do the assessments, say, okay, look, John Doe is fabulous, with great personable skills, is a hard worker, and would be excellent at, whether it be in the service industry or even working in companies. This person would be excellent. He's excellent on computers. She's excellent with people. She'd be wonderful working, as a hostess or a waitress or in the kitchen or, on the computer or answering the phones for a law firm. I mean, there's so many different jobs. Everybody's hiring. So that's why you need the staff that can help the families to go ahead and be able to say, okay, here's what we can do for your child, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. She is excellent. She's great at this. This is what we're going to do. We're going to advocate for this job. We're going to get the training. So if we have the workers to be able to assess the families and the situations, then we can go ahead and do job training and work with local businesses and companies and corporations to say, hey, look, you're hiring, here's what we have, and partner with those companies to take in the workers. Everybody's looking for workers. And like I said, everyone deserves dignity for their job. There's no job too great, and there's no, too big or too small. My mom was a waitress with 4 kids her whole life. And, that job is just as important to me, as a police officer. I mean, there's a job for everybody. And if everybody has dignity for their job, our community is a better place. So it would be, making sure that we do those connections, but we need the funding for that.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
Excellent job, Sarah. Thank you so much. Well, you're lucky. You'll be starting a new legislative session. So there's a clean slate. Everything, the current legislative session will end on November 30th. It's what we call sine die, and everything will die, and there'll be new opportunities for everyone to start all over again, I guess. Our funding is never cut. It has not been cut in years. It's just, it has not been enough.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
Right,
when
right.
you look at the current budget season that we just went through, there was an increase in funding, but it just still is not enough to reach the shortage around DSPs. And just for the record, I have to let you know that the ARC of Pennsylvania is adamant to close the state institutions. I mean, we do not want them open. It's a segregated, old system where people are not being included in the community. Most people in Pennsylvania receive their services in homes, and then I think it's around 9,000 individuals, I think I might have that number wrong, 9,000 to 12,000 individuals are receiving services in group homes. So this is something that we have worked very diligently on to close the remaining 4 institutions. There's actually a federal, it's called the Olmstead Act, which people cannot be put in institutions as the first option. So this is something we will never continue to advocate for.
So I have a question. Can I ask a question about that? It was my understanding from what I've learned through my, Monroe County being involved. So you're working with families, and which is wonderful, especially when you have the support of a family. They're like right now in the Monroe County Jail, it's over 70% of their inmates are either substance abuse or there's mental illness. Okay, not some of it is intellectual delays, but a lot of it is mental illness. And one of the issues is there's nowhere for them to go. So they're in jail because you're mad at them. They did something wrong, and then they're back out into our community, and it's just a cycle.
It's 2 separate systems.
Right. So
people with mental health do not go into institutions for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
I know that. So this was my question. So that's just think about that. So they always say like, I wish we had a place we could help them. When it comes to, this is something I don't know, when it comes to the intellectual, disability, for adults who maybe don't have family or, anything like that, what happens in the system if there isn't a group home? What happens?
Well, first of all, I mean, there are group homes.
Right. I know there are, however, what do you do if we don't have more of them in our area? Because it's hard to live, it's expensive.
I understand. And so our system does everything possible to make sure that that individual is either taken care of by a family member or is receiving services in a group home. The people who are currently residing in institutions all have that up. They will not be just left in the street. It's 2 different systems. So what happens now is that these families will work with social workers and to try to find placement within the community or back with their loved one. If there is no such avenue, they can be reassigned to another state institution. There will still be 2 left. It will be Evansburg and Selinsgrove. But Mary Claire, I'm sure because you're so close to the Whitehaven closure, and I know that the DSP crisis obviously affects your ability to bring more people into the community services, the community homes. But I think that I'm pretty safe to say that Mary Claire would do everything in her power to make sure that that individual has a place in her community home. I don't know, Mary Claire, if you wanna weigh in on this.
And this is important, and thank you for explaining to me, because I know how the mental, I know the mental health system, and I know what the ARC does, but it's a question of, I just hate to see when someone doesn't have anywhere to go. And
It never happens in our system. It
it
never
doesn't. Okay.
happens.
Okay. Well, that's good.
No, it's nope. It is everyone. The door of Whitehaven and Polk will remain open until the very last person has a place to live. They cannot close. It's against the law.
And then with the prices of Monroe County, it's got to be hard to be able to afford, when to get out of the group home and possibly live on their own, right?
Well, that's not just Monroe County. I mean, the issue there is livable wages and people hiring people with intellectual disabilities. It's independent living can be done. Many of our chapters have apartments that individuals can live independently with supports. It's a little bit of a different system. Home and community-based system is a very complex system we're dictated a lot by what the federal government will pay us. It's a Medicaid system.
Okay.
So people have waivers in order to help pay. Mary Claire, do you want to weigh in? Do you have any insight?
Oh, absolutely. And I thank you for this opportunity. And I will begin by saying this is my 41st year with the ARC of Northeastern Pennsylvania. And along the way, we have had crisis in staffing probably every single year. And as you mentioned, Tara, it's the lack of respect by our communities, and therefore a less than livable wage makes it a transitional position as a direct support professional rather than a career.
Right.
Over the last few years, what we have witnessed in terms of providers' inability to address folks with needs that require intense supports. And as Sherry mentioned, as an advocacy organization, it is our responsibility to make sure that we do everything that we can do to serve those individuals, so that families and individuals are in fact supported. What I'd like to say about the state centers is, as an advocacy organization, as Sherry mentioned, it is unacceptable for us to offer state center care to individuals and families simply because that's less than the rights that the individuals that we support are entitled to. Life in community, life with family, life with friends and loved ones is important to all of us.
Right.
Every single one of us, including the folks that we serve. So our dedication is to those individuals, and we do not advocate for a segregated life in a state facility.
Okay.
It's unacceptable, it's unfair, it's not right.
Right.
So we would hope that you would agree and support us in supporting life and community as it should be.
Well, absolutely. That makes sense. And I think knowing now with this, I mean, I know what the ARC is different than, when I see what goes on with mental health and drug abuse, I just see that a lot of times people are alone with nothing. But what you're saying is you make sure that does not happen. So you will make sure that someone with a learning disability, there's going to be a home for them no matter what. And you have a catch-all, a catch. And that's really good to know, because a lot of the different types of services outside of what you do, they don't have that luxury. And I don't mean to say luxury, but they're on their own and they can't do it. And it's good to know that with the ARC, like you said, if there's not a family, there's a group home, there's something to keep them in the community. So that's important. You have different levels of, when something doesn't work out, you can catch them as the things are happening and make sure that they stay in the community. And that's important. A lot of different agencies don't have that.
We have teams that are dedicated to identifying options. And
Right.
that's what it takes today.
Right. And that's
We have
nice.
a number of options available to us as per our ethics, our dedication to keep folks where they
Right.
should be, and that's in their community.
Right. And that's nice. And I'm glad that that's something I just learned. So that's awesome. I'm glad that you have that. And that's why I said luxury isn't the word. It was like, I was trying to get the catch, so, no, but that's great. And, yeah, that's wonderful that you're able to do that. But it sounds like you need more advocates working in your corner to be able to help these families out before it gets, yeah.
Yes, we do. You mentioned before, the folks with mental health concerns and who are unable for whatever reason to obtain the supports that they need. That's exactly, and if you remember 20 years ago, the right way that back then to support folks who needed mental health support was in community. But unfortunately, community was defined as the streets.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we don't want.
Right.
The individuals that we serve.
Yeah, you just want to be able to integrate and work and just, I get it.
Support, and I thank you for that.
No problem. And I really do appreciate your time.
The Meet the Candidates series is an opportunity for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to hear from candidates on disability issues. Candidates from all parties have been invited to participate. The ARC of Pennsylvania is a non-partisan organization and does not endorse political candidates.